Hello and welcome to our insurance education event today, which is part of our new How to Write series presented by the Insurance Journal's Academy of Insurance and sponsored by Neptune Flood. We are scheduling 30 specialty lines topic related events, which agents and brokers may access free to get current intel and tips on how to write each product line. Check our event schedule and sign up today at www.ijacademy.com/how to write. A special thank you to our sponsor, Neptune Flood, for making this available to our industry. Because of your partnership, today's event is totally free for agents and brokers. Today's event is How to Write Flood, and our subject matter expert today is Jean-Luc Eckstein. Jean-Luc is Neptune's Chief Customer Officer. Jean-Luc joined Neptune in 2019 to build its agent and direct-to-consumer distribution platform and to in-house its customer service operations. Prior to Neptune, Jean-Luc was a manager at Fortune 500 technology solutions provider, CDW, where he sold software and hardware directly to some of the largest companies in the United States before being promoted to international client strategy manager, overseeing a team responsible for cross-border technology sales. He is a graduate of CDW's prestigious Emerging Leaders program and completed CDW's Sales Leadership Academy. Jean-Luc started his technology sales career at Tech Data, where he was a major accounts manager. Jean-Luc graduated from the University of Tampa in 2012. We are in extremely capable hands today, ladies and gentlemen. It's my privilege and pleasure to introduce to you today's expert speaker, Jean-Luc Eckstein.
George, thank you. Very much appreciate the opportunity to be here and be in front of everyone that's joined here to learn a little bit more about Neptune, but maybe also the private flood industry in general. Uh, uh, Throughout today's discussion, as George just mentioned, we'll talk about how did flood insurance come about? How does Neptune fit in the industry? How you should think about Neptune as you're discussing the topic of flood insurance with your customers. We'll talk a little bit about best practices around that conversation, and then of course we'll round the discussion out with any broader Q&A that you may have that comes along through the talking points that I have today. It's a great time to be having a discussion around flood insurance, whether that be with the NFIP or with a private market like Neptune. In July of this year, 23 states experienced flooding. And so there's flooding that is occurring everywhere, even if a hurricane is not impacting the United States. But as we sit here today, Hurricane Erin, is working its way towards the United States, and we'll start to see the impacts of that along the eastern seaboard, particularly in North Carolina, as early as tonight, certainly tomorrow. All of that that Erin brings with will likely bring anywhere between a 1 to 5 foot storm surge, depending on where along the eastern seaboard those foot metrics are. So flooding is occurring everywhere throughout the United States at all times of the year, and so it's a very appropriate time to have a conversation around flood insurance. And so I think that it's a good spot to start is how has flood insurance come about? And so flood insurance has historically been serviced by the NFIP, the National Flood Insurance Program. The National Flood Insurance Program was established in 1968 and just served as a flood insurance for $250,000, $100,000 in coverage for contents. It's stayed that way since or through today. It's said another way, it's really provided just a basic low-level insurance coverage for the peril of flood. It's served as the primary market for about 50 years. And then in 2012, Congress passed the Biggert Waters Act, which allowed for the existence of private flood in a more meaningful way. And in 2012 and in the immediate years thereafter, Neptune was born, like many other private flood insurance companies throughout the United States. Private flood insurance companies are an alternative to the NFIP that provide higher limits, broader coverage, and maybe even a faster coverage to start. And so the idea with private market is, private flood companies are allowed to leverage the NFIP form, but are allowed to make the form better through higher limits or high value optional coverages to really provide a comprehensive flood policy for your customer. And so over the last 10 years or so, a lot of the private flood companies have really developed and built a really renowned system of products to really allow agents to sell flood insurance to their customers appropriately. All to say, Neptune has been part of this transformation of flood insurance, and we initially started when we developed everything natively at Neptune. So everything has been internally built, from our underwriting engine to our policy management system, et cetera. Everything is built on proprietary technology platforms here at Neptune, and we've really thought of how can we do flood insurance in a different way than what the NFIP does today. So we use data science, we use machine learning, all to say that that provides us a robust modeled outcomes for what we're looking for from an underwriting perspective, from a risk selection perspective, and then ultimately for those premiums. All to say, that type of model, company model, coupled with the higher limits and the optional coverages we provide, has lent us to become the leading private flood insurance company in the United States. We're approaching 260,000 customers nationwide. We're in all 50 states plus DC, and we're 100% excess and surplus lines. We offer product types that fit residential, commercial, and RC BAT for both primary and excess flood. I'll talk a bit more about our products in a moment. And as per Biggert-Waters stipulation, all private flood companies that leverage carriers, those carriers must be A- or better rated. And so all of our carriers are A- or better rated, and you can see some of the carriers that we have here on the screen, like AXA XL, Transverse, Lloyd's, Palomar, and Fortegra. Neptune has navigated 7 successful hurricane seasons, and we're currently in our 8th today. Neptune goes to market with a variety of value props. 2 of our most important value props for agents and for consumers is that we make it super easy for the agent and for the customer to obtain a flood insurance quote. It takes less than a minute, and all we need is the address of the property. And through this, agents are able to get a price discovery within seconds. We have about 95% property availability across the country. We don't write in barrier islands, think Fire Island, New York, or South Padre Island, Texas. But all to say is this property availability nationwide and the ease of use of running a quote has really enabled agents to offer flood insurance every time a property comes across their desk, which in many cases has allowed agents to sell 2 to 3x the amount of flood insurance they were prior to using Neptune. Our system will follow up with the appropriate parties relative to that policy on a set timetable. And so Neptune chases for all signatures, payments, renewals, etc. All to say is we really think of our system as a bind it and forget it type system for the agent. As soon as you bind it, we will handle the rest. And then the second value prop that Neptune goes to market with is that we offer higher limits and broader coverage than that of the NFIP. On the next few slides, you'll see the comparison charts that we have of the Neptune product relative to the NFIP product, and you'll see how we are able to provide that comprehensive solution. In addition to those higher limits, we have higher value optional coverages. Again, this is across all different product types that we offer this. And so a lot of the value, these 2 value props here that I've highlighted on this page has really led Neptune to become the leading private flood insurance company in the United States today. Here's a side-by-side comparison chart for the Neptune residential product compared to the NFIP residential product. And so at the top here, you can see our coverage A limit. We go up to 7 million. The NFIP product only goes up to 250,000. Contents, 500,000. NFIP, 100,000. And then here in the middle of the screen, you can see all of our high-value optional coverages that we offer. 2 of our most popular on the residential side is temporary living expense and replacement cost of contents. Temporary living expense allows for the homeowner or the property owner to have any expenses reimbursed to them should this be added on. And those expenses include lodging, transportation, or even food in the event that their home is uninhabitable due to a flood. Replacement cost of contents, all primary flood policies are settled at actual cash value. And so this optional coverage allows agents and or insureds to elevate that from actual cash value to replacement cost. And so those are our 2 most popular, but you can see we have a variety of others there. Neptune never requires an elevation certificate. And then the last item here on this row is that we do have a standard 10-day wait period compared to the NFIP that has a 30-day wait period. So you're able to secure coverage faster through Neptune than you are with the NFIP. This waiting period can be waived, of course, for any real estate transactions, including cash closings, or a rollover from another flood policy. So that way there's no lapse in coverage. Here is our commercial product. You can again see the differences in our higher limits for the building and the contents coverage. You can see all of our optional coverages here in the middle. Our two most popular here on the commercial product is our business interruption and our replacement costs on the building. But you can see here we offer quite a few other optional coverages as well. Again, elevation certificate is optional, and our waiting period is the exact same, 10 days compared to 30, and it can be waived for a real estate transaction or a rollover. And the last comparable slide chart here is our RC BAP product. So here you can see again higher limits for both building and contents, and then we have a few optional coverages here, and the elevation certificate again is optional. One of our newer products is excess flood. Excess flood we developed about a year and a half ago, and it really was born out of a Research Congressional Authority publication from about 2 years ago, where that publication stipulated that of the about 4 million NFIP policyholders today, about 2 million are on a glide path where they won't reach their full risk rate under the new risk rating 2.0 pricing methodology for anywhere between a decade and a half from now. Meaning their policies with the NFIP are so heavily subsidized that it's going to take a 10 to 15 years before they reach their full risk rate and be under the new risk rating 2.0 methodology at the appropriate price for that risk for that property. Congress has capped the price increases year over year to 18% for personal lines and 25% for commercial, and that's why it takes sometimes so long for these properties to reach their full risk rate. One example is someone contacted Neptune. They have a property here in St. Petersburg, Florida, and they're on the water. Their initial price with the NFIP was about $550. In 17 years, it'll eventually be $12,500. And so you can see that that is massively subsidized policy. And so there are about 2 million of those today with the NFIP. And so we said, well, let's come out with an excess product because maybe those people don't want to leave the NFIP because that price is so cheap. And if they were to move to the private market, Neptune or other, they would be paying more than the $550 today. But maybe they want more limits or higher limits or optional coverages to fill out or provide a robust, comprehensive flood policy. And so we came out with Neptune Excess Flood. It's available for residential, commercial, and RCBAP property types. It's only available in excess of the NFIP policy. There's a $0 deductible, and all of the optional coverages will respond as primary in the event of a flood. So it really provides a nice wrap to that NFIP policy. So if you have a personal lines policy with the NFIP, it's at $250, $100 respectively for the coverage limits for A and B. You then could get a Neptune excess policy up to $7 million. So technically, a property owner could have $7,250,000 in coverage A for their property for the peril of flood. Then they could add on any of our optional coverages like temporary living expense. And in the event of a flood, temporary living expense would drop down as primary and provide that cover for that property owner in the event of a flood. This product does have minimum earned premiums, and personal lines has a set schedule, however many days in force. The equivalent premium is also in force. That table is found on the last page of the policy. And then our commercial and RC BAP product have a minimum earned premium of 100% on day one. This product has really taken off with, again, the cohort of policyholders that don't want to leave the NFIP because their policy is so heavily subsidized. And then also with the high net worth space. So if you have high net worth clients, this is an area of opportunity where you can, max out the appropriate coverages for them on top of their NFIP policy. Earlier, I mentioned our ease of use and all we need is an address. Here's a quick screenshot of the quote page. In order to get to the quote page, you would have entered the address in, click OK, and you'll then land on a page like this. In the lower right-hand corner, you can see a premium. This premium is relative to the NFIP limit, so we can provide agents an apples-to-apples comparison up front. And that is a matter of seconds that populates. And so that's the power of Neptune. We can quickly give you a price indication or price discovery based on an apples to apples comparison to the NFIP limits. But there's more content here that I wanted to highlight as it relates for agents to use in an enablement way. In this screenshot on the right-hand side, you'll see a few boxes filled with text. In the top portion of this, there's a section called Insights. There's one yellow box followed by 3 gray boxes. This provides the agent just some situational awareness to navigate the conversation of flood. And so the first piece in yellow is that we're highlighting that there is an active disturbance or an active hurricane or some sort of activity going on in the tropics or in the Atlantic, and just to say this is occurring close or relatively close to the property that you're quoting. And so you could be an agent in California, and you may not have the constant news cycle like we do here in the eastern coast, eastern side of the U.S. Of hurricane season. And so this just gives the agent a bit situational awareness, can talk to their customer about this and what's going on. And then immediately below that, relative to where the property is located, we will also display information as it relates to a certain or a specific flood event, or over a duration of time, what flooding has occurred and what type of damage has occurred over that time period. Agents can copy and paste this and leverage this in their email written communication, or leverage it live and intertwine it in their conversation with their customer. And so this has been immensely helpful for agents that may not sell flood insurance all that often. Maybe they're not comfortable or they find flood insurance complex. This is the whole idea of this, is to help enable the sales conversation and just make it a bit more easy for agents to navigate. Below that in the blue is for agents to help consider optional coverages for that particular property. And so just as the example, we'll take the first one. The first one here is saying, if you would like to add replacement cost of contents, it would just be an additional $68 for annual premium. And so agents can be a bit more aware of what that would cost to add that optional coverage on. And then there's some subtext here, and it says, this will give information as to relates to what does this even mean. And it just says, this ensures claims are settled at replacement cost value for personal belongings rather than actual cash value. And 42% of residential policy buyers nationwide have purchased this contents. This could also get a bit more granular depending on what city you're in or zip code. It may say 40% of people in this zip code or 60% of people in this city. And so your agents have been able to leverage this and say, hey, your neighbors are buying this optional coverage. You should consider this as well. So again, it's all in the spirit of sales enablement around demystifying the conversation of flood insurance. And so this is a tool that agents are leveraging daily. Wanted to highlight some quick flood facts for everyone. First is there's a basic law in the United States. If your customer or the individual you're working with has a property in a high-risk flood zone that starts with the letter A as in Alpha or V as in Victor, and they have a mortgage, they will be federally required to have flood insurance. So if you know these two are to be true and you're not offering, you should be offering flood insurance then to your customer. Being in an X zone doesn't always mean that they're not at risk. Hurricane Harvey had a massive implication for Houston, Texas, or Harris County. Many of the properties that were flooded in that event were actually in what FEMA or the NFIP designates as low risk, and that starts with X as an X zone. And so nearly 60% of our daily sales are actually in X zone for X zone properties. A lot of the X zone or a lot of the flood zones, excuse me, are outdated. And so people recognize that their risk to the peril of flood, even though they may be in a quote unquote low risk zone or an X zone, they recognize that their risk is actually pretty significant. And so they are securing flood coverage. Many people just don't, they'll say, I don't know where the water will come from. I don't know how long the water will stay. And I also don't know where the water will recede to. And so they just want to be protected and have a flood policy. Banks must accept Neptune as a valid alternative to the NFIP. This generally is across the board for all private flood insurance companies. As long as they adhere to the Biggert-Waters rules, this should be no problem. Neptune has the stipulation and the corresponding act listed on our policy documents. That will be for every policy that's bound with Neptune as a primary policy. Here are some scripts for agents that may not be familiar with flood insurance, or you found flood insurance to be too complex or confusing under the NFIP. We've just tried to, again, demystify it and enable the sales conversation. And so it's really just as simple as Your homeowner's policy does not cover the peril of flood. If you want to be protected from the peril of flood, you will need to buy a separate flood policy, and that would cost you $312 or $752. You can use these scripts to be helpful as navigating that conversation. And then, of course, if a customer asks, well, what is the definition of a flood? This is a definition you can start with, and then, of course, point them to the language in the policy. Neptune's definition of a flood matches that of the NFIP, just for simplicity and making sure that we don't add any additional confusion to that definition. Some agent best practices and opportunity. So there's an immense amount of opportunity just only within your book, but also with all the properties across the United States. And so as you read some of these statistics on the slide, I wanted to talk through about some best practices that I hear daily from agents of what they're doing to sell more flood insurance and to ultimately protect their E&O. First, they offer flood insurance at every new business opportunity that comes across their desk. They quote it regardless, even if it is a low risk policy. They send that out to their customer as part of the package. They also do that for their renewal book. If they do not have a companion flood policy for the homeowner's policy or the business owner's policy, they quote flood and offer it as part of the renewal package. For both of those scenarios, new business and renewal, once the flood quote has been offered, if for some reason the property owner has decided not to move forward with flood insurance, that agent then uses the built-in declination tool that Neptune has built and provided, saying they click to send an email. The email is sent to the property owner to say, hi, I'm your agent. I recommend you buy flood insurance for this particular property. And against my recommendation, you're not buying flood insurance. Please sign here and acknowledge this. We keep track of all of those emails. We keep track of those that have signed. But we also give those property owners a third option, and that option is to change their mind, and they can ultimately self-fulfill using that tool. They can self-fulfill, bind that policy. The agent that originally quoted it and offered it is the agent of record. They get full commission, and we keep track of that in the reporting as well. And so this is a tool that agents use regularly. And ultimately, we see about 7% of people change their mind, and then those policies continue to retain year after year. And so it's been a very helpful tool for protecting but also getting people to change their mind and saying, yes, okay, I understand. I really don't know how the peril of flood will impact this particular property, and I really should be protected. Just to help set the stage for the stats that were on the prior slide, I wanted to give a really full scope of the opportunity here in the United States. There are about 110 million buildings in the United States total today. Of that, about 23.5 million are at risk, so moderate to severe risk of flooding. And of that, the NFIP in zone A and V and all the subzones within those two categories, there are about 9 million properties in those flood zones. But today, there are only about 4.2 to 4.4 million primary flood policies in the United States. And so you can see that the opportunity here is pretty massive, even if you just use the 9 million number. But really, the number is 23.5 million properties in the United States are at moderate to severe risk of having a flood. And so the numbers grow pretty quickly to say, yes, there is a lot of opportunity to offer flood and then have, grow your own flood book within your portfolio. To help with this, Neptune has a research group where we publish an article once every 30 to 60 days. Our most recent article is Bridging the Flood Insurance Gap and Addressing the Underinsurance Crisis in the United States. A lot of statistics, a lot of information in these articles that could be helpful in navigating conversations or maybe just thinking about how you want to sell flood insurance in your own book and how you want to target or tackle that. This is available at neptuneflood.com/research. Please sign up to that. We also will add that in our monthly newsletters, so you can be able to look out for that there as well. If you don't have access with us today, or maybe you do and you didn't realize it or you forgot your password, if you're a brand new agent, you don't have access, you can go to neptuneflood.com/new agent and you can enroll to become a new agent. Just complete the application. It takes about 5 to 10 minutes and you'll have your login credentials thereafter and be able to access and start quoting immediately. If you have credentials, but perhaps forgot your username or forgot your password, no problem. Reach out to us at support@neptuneflood.com and we'll be sure to answer or get you the credentials that you need to be able to log into our system and have access. And so throughout today's topics or agenda and discussion, we talked about how did flood insurance come about, who's primarily served that, talked about how Neptune now fits in that market, the Neptune differentiation, the value props we provide, our different products, and what that looks like compared to the NFIP, some best practices, and of course, the opportunity at large here for you all. That's all the content I had today. And so, George, I'll turn it back over to you to navigate next steps around Q&A, and then happy to answer any questions that may come up.
Jean-Luc, thanks very much. And we didn't take questions largely throughout the presentation, so I'm gonna just give you the questions as they came in,
Okay,
and you may have covered them in the talk, but I just wanted to reiterate in case anyone had any questions to
perfect.
ask on top of those questions. One question is, do you offer flood insurance for commercial risks?
Yes, we do. We do offer flood insurance for commercial risks, and that's for all property types within the commercial family. Most of our commercial risks are going to be considered garden style if there are multiple units, and or we do a lot of the properties like fast food restaurant chains, those types of buildings. Those fit our appetite really well.
Thank you. How can insurance companies partner with Neptune? For example, how is Palomar leveraging Neptune's technology?
Yeah. So Palomar so let me back up. Neptune is an MGA. We manage all of the risk selection, the pricing, and the underwriting for all of our carriers that then take that risk. Palomar has recently, we've partnered with Palomar, and Palomar has now become our newest and our seventh carrier to take or to provide Neptune capacity to place risks with. And so we will, as new quotes are run in our system and then bound, we have a disaggregation technology to say, where is this property located? And based on that property's location, we do two different radials to say, how much risk do we have in here? How much TIV do we have within this? And within our 7 carriers, who is next up in our round robin to then get this property allocated to them? And so Palomar will now become a carrier for us where risks will be placed against that. Just because you get one carrier, insured may get one carrier versus another, the pricing is the exact same. The underwriting is the exact same. All of the carriers have signed up to Neptune's guidelines. And so there's no difference with that. It's just a mechanism to say if there was a concentration of policies all close together, not one carrier would have all of those policies. They would be equally divided among the carriers that we have. And so this is just a mechanism to protect Neptune, to protect all of the policyholders, the employees, our carriers, et cetera. And so this is just a way that we've done business.
We have time for a couple more questions. For clients who already have flood insurance, non-NFIP, is there a self-service quote link that can be sent to them to compare?
There is. We have what we call the widget. Agents can create, once you have your own profile with Neptune, if you navigate to your profile homepage, you can register for a widget. This widget is going to be tied to your code. You then can use this to add your logo, your contact information. It'll be co-branded between Neptune and your logo. You then can use this to send as a one-off link to your customers as needed, or you can even do this in a remarketing campaign of sorts. You can take your book that you have today and say, all of these customers of mine do not have a flood insurance policy with me today. Let me send this email as it relates to flood insurance to them, and maybe I can find the ones that are high intent. They may bind themselves and self-fulfill, or maybe they fill out they go down the path of this direct consumer flow tied to your code and they enter their contact information, but maybe they don't bind. But we send the agent an email just to say they have high intent. They entered their information in, they made it all the way through this process. Here's the quote number. You may want to call them to try to see if you can, finalize this policy for them. And so this has been a really helpful tool for agents to use, both in email remarketing or even putting on their website to monetize their flood page on their site. And it just is an added way to add policies to their portfolio.
Jean-Luc, thank you so much. And for those who didn't get their questions answered, Will that email go to you? Or no, actually, you've got your personal one right there. Not your personal one, but your Neptune Flood email.
Yep.
So
Yep.
thank you everybody for coming today. I'd also like to, and you're getting a lot of great comments to fantastic presentation. One, you've converted. I can't wait to sell Flood. That's as nice of a one as you can get.
Good.
I'm also so thanks to Jean-Luc Eckstein for today's presentation. Thanks to Neptune Flood for sponsoring today. Thank you, Jean-Luc, for giving your contact information. I'd like to give the contact information for the Academy of Insurance as well. You can reach us by email at support@IJ support@ijacademy.com. Also by telephone, 1-800-897-9965, 800-897-9965, extension 166. We're going to send a survey to fill out. We'd like to know what you thought of today's presentation and what you'd like to see from us in future classes, courses, books, media, anything you like. We are your academy. We want to be the best academy we can be for you. On behalf of our subject matter expert, Jean-Luc Eckstein, this is your host, George, saying thanks everyone for joining us for the event today, and we will see you